The night began in silence, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the steady hum of the ceiling fan above my bed. But at 2:17 a.m., I shot awake with a strange sensation that something was wrong, a faint crackling sound outside my window, paired with the acrid stench of burning wood creeping into the room. Panic jolted through me as I pulled back the curtain and saw an eerie orange glow dancing across the lawn, flames licking hungrily at the porch railings of my house. My heart pounded as realization crashed in. Our home was on fire, and my daughter Emma, who was disabled and used a wheelchair, was still asleep in her ground floor bedroom near the very spot where the fire burned the hottest, shouting her name. I raced down the hallway, only to be met by a wall of choking black smoke, heat blasting against my face as if the house itself were trying to push me back. I grabbed the fire extinguisher, desperate, spraying blindly, but the flames were too strong, the smoke too thick, and I stumbled backward, coughing violently, knowing I couldn't reach Emma this way. Terror clawed at me, and as I burst through the front door into the night air, desperate for another entry point, my eyes landed on a figure standing across the street. Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of our HOA, arms crossed, smirk plastered across her face like she was watching a show she had bought tickets to. For months, she had waged war on me with bogus fines, threatening letters, and harassment, all because I refused to bow to her endless community improvement fees, and because she saw my daughter as nothing more than an inconvenience. And now, in the glow of the firelight, the horrifying truth struck me like a punch to the gut. She had done this. She had set the blaze. Fury surged through my veins as I shouted her name, demanding to know what she had done. But she only tilted her head and muttered something chilling. Maybe now the neighborhood won't look so run down. My fists clenched, my body trembling between rage and fear. But I didn't have time to argue. Emma's faint cries for help reached me through the roar of the flames, and I knew I had seconds, maybe less, to save her. Racing around to the back, I grabbed a brick and smashed her window open, shards flying everywhere, smoke billowing out in suffocating clouds. I could barely see, but I pulled my shirt over my mouth, climbed in, and dropped to the floor where the air was thinner. "Emma, hold on, baby," I shouted, crawling forward until I felt her small hand clutch mine, weak but still alive. Scooping her into my arms, her wheelchair useless in the chaos, I staggered toward the shattered window, shielding her as the ceiling above groaned and a flaming beam crashed down inches behind us. With one last surge of adrenaline, I pushed us both through the opening and tumbled into the cool grass outside, Emma coughing but breathing in my arms. Relief overwhelmed me as I held her tight, tears burning my smoke-stung eyes. But when I looked up again, Karen was still there, watching, her smirk faltering as neighbors began pouring out of their homes, their whispers rising as they noticed her presence at the scene. For the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker across her face, but deep down I knew this was only the beginning, that she had crossed a line so dark there was no going back, and now the entire neighborhood had seen it too. The fire trucks screamed down the street minutes later, their sirens slicing through the night, red and blue lights, washing over the smoke-filled chaos as firefighters rushed to uncoil hoses and attack the flames consuming what used to be our porch. Paramedics crouched beside Emma and me, slipping an oxygen mask over her face while checking her vitals. But I barely registered their words because my eyes were locked on Karen, who now stood stiffly among the gathering neighbors, her arms crossed, tight as though trying to wrap herself in a shield of arrogance. When the fire marshal approached me, notebook in hand, asking how it started, I wasted no time. I told him about the months of harassment, the threats Karen had thrown at me during HOA meetings, the fines she invented out of thin air, and her chilling comments about my daughter being a burden dragging down property values. The marshal listened carefully, his expression darkening, and before I could even finish, two of my neighbors stepped forward, voices trembling but resolute, admitting that they had overheard Karen shouting at me the previous week, promising I'd regret ever crossing the HOA. Another neighbor, old Mr. Thompson from across the street, added that he'd seen Karen prowling near my house late at night, flashlight in hand, though he hadn't wanted to get involved at the time. Piece by piece, their words built a picture Karen couldn't deny. The firefighters soon confirmed the fire hadn't been accidental. traces of accelerants were found near the porch, and the burn pattern proved someone had deliberately set it. As this was announced, Karen's face drained of color for the first time, her carefully constructed wall of smug superiority cracking under the weight of evidence. Still, she tried to spin it, loudly insisting she had just been walking her dog when she noticed the fire and stopped to make sure nobody was hurt. But the irony was laughable, because Karen didn't even own a dog, a fact the entire neighborhood knew. The officers' pens paused mid-scribble, their eyes narrowing, and I could feel the tide turning. Emma, weak but conscious, clutched my hand and whispered through the oxygen mask, "Dad, she did it, she tried to kill us." Her words trembling, yet cutting through the chaos like a blade. My heart clenched, fury flooding me as I realized my little girl had nearly died because of Karen's obsession with power. The officers wasted no more time. They stepped toward Karen, asked her to place her hands behind her back, and when she shrieked in protest, screaming about abuse of authority, neighbors conspiring against her, and how the whole community would regret this, the crowd didn't flinch or defend her. Instead, they stood united, silent but firm, many with arms crossed, their faces hardened against her venom. The handcuffs clicked around her wrists, and for the first time in years, she wasn't the one in control. I watched as she was marched to the squad car, her shrill voice echoing down the street, but all I could feel was the weight of Emma's hand in mine, her pulse steady beneath my fingers, reminding me of what truly mattered. Yet, as the cruiser pulled away and Karen's eyes locked with mine through the tinted glass, I knew this wasn't the end. The look she gave me wasn't fear or remorse. It was a promise that she would fight, that she would drag us all down with her if she could. And deep down, I understood one truth. This battle had only just begun. The weeks after the fire blurred into a storm of hospital visits, insurance calls, and sleepless nights spent holding Emma when nightmares ripped her awake. But through the haze, one thing became my driving force: making sure Karen never had the chance to hurt us or anyone again. The trial arrived faster than I expected, the courtroom packed with neighbors who had once bowed their heads in silence during HOA meetings but now sat upright, ready to testify against the woman who had terrorized us all for years. Karen entered with the same haughty tilt of her chin, her expensive suit crisp, her hair meticulously styled as though presentation alone could erase the stench of gasoline found on her clothes the night of the fire. But the arrogance wavered when the prosecutor laid out the evidence. The fire marshal's report showing accelerants traced back to the porch, the security camera footage from a neighbor's doorbell that caught Karen skulking near my property minutes before the blaze, and the testimony of multiple witnesses who had endured her threats. Karen tried everything, first crocodile tears, sobbing about how she was being persecuted for being a strong woman in power, then wild accusations that I had burned my own house down for insurance money, then in a shocking display of cruelty, suggesting that Emma had somehow caused the fire herself, which drew gasps of outrage from everyone present and made the judge slam his gavel to demand silence. But the jury wasn't fooled. They saw her for what she was, a petty tyrant who had finally taken her obsession too far. The turning point came when Emma, fragile but determined, wheeled herself to the stand. Her voice trembled, but she told them what she remembered: the smoke filling her room, her fear, and how she had seen Karen's silhouette through the window just before the fire spread. "She tried to kill me," Emma said, tears streaking her cheeks, and the courtroom went utterly still. No defense attorney's spin could wash that away. When the jury returned with the verdict, guilty on all counts, including attempted murder, the collective sigh of relief was palpable. Karen's face contorted with rage, veins bulging in her neck as she screamed at the judge, at me, at the neighbors, even at the jury. But her words fell on deaf ears. The judge's gavel came down hard, sentencing her to decades behind bars. And with that sound, it felt as though the entire neighborhood exhaled after years of suffocation. Outside, reporters crowded for quotes, neighbors patted me on the back, some apologizing for not standing up to her sooner, others thanking me for finally ending her reign of terror, and for the first time, I saw genuine unity in our community. The HOA, stripped of its tyrant leader, collapsed within weeks, freeing us from the stranglehold of her rules and fines, and slowly, painfully, Emma and I began to rebuild. One evening, as we stood together on the charred remains of our porch, she leaned against me and whispered, "We're safe now, Dad." I wrapped my arm around her, staring out at the horizon where the sun dipped low, and I realized Karen's fire hadn't destroyed us. It had forged us stronger, and though she sat in a prison cell plotting whatever fantasies she clung to, she no longer had power over our lives. Justice had been delivered, and this time it was permanent.